for our next speaker, I'd like to call Dr. Omar Kaddouha. He's the Director for Flight Safety and the Chief Accident Investigator from the Lebanese Directorate General Civil Aviation Authority in Lebanon. Please, he will be talking about the crisis on the horizon, is what we've all been trying to strive for, is how do we manage the shortage of skilled labor in the aviation industry. For those of you who are familiar with this, we are trying to encourage our youth today. Hence, we have a youth in aviation section, and we're trying to encourage all the aviation industry professionals to encourage their colleagues to come in and join us to manage this shortage. So please, Dr. Omar, join us on stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to be here with you today. Just to give you a small hint about my background, initially I started within the industry for an airline as a cargo airliner, and afterwards I joined the authority. So what I give today is a little bit background about how a regulatory authority shapes the industry for the future to ensure safe and efficient transport of passengers and goods throughout the world. And safe means we do not have, despite all the crises that we might face, not to jeopardize the safety or the risk assessment to be managed at all times, and ensure efficiency, which is profitability and how to increase the yield margins of the airlines. So my presentation today, I would like to talk about what we are facing and what industry is facing as a main challenge in finding the proper human resources to sustain aviation business and sustain the aviation industry throughout the future. Initially, we know that ICAO is the major governing body for airlines and for the states. And ICAO, of course, it conducts oversight activities and ICVM missions on the authorities in order to ensure that these states, they always comply on a continuing basis with the international standards and recommended practices. And the airlines, at all times, they are images of the authorities. If the authority is performing properly, then the airlines are mirroring the authority, and they are providing the proper reflection that the authority is performing well and that the airline meets the minimum international standards of safety and compliance. But the major challenge remains within allocation of resources. Airlines are facing major challenges, which is the human factor. And despite the situation that the airworld traffic is increasing, but the pandemic has made jeopardy to the industry. And that this pandemic has, aligned with the fallouts of the redundancy systems and some various difficulties, has affected the industry and provided struggling for the industry, which is the airlines. And that we are not properly trying to find the proper skills and professionalism within the industry despite the increasing of demand of the airlines. So ICAO has recognized this problem like a decade ago or more than that in 2009, where they have introduced an initiative which is, as you can see here, which is the Next Generation of Aviation Professionalism Task Force. But this initiative has been faced by the major struggle, which is the pandemic or the COVID, that has jeopardized this initiative, and that we are now facing this major problem, and that ICAO has to reshape the situation in order to, again, redesign the new strategy of coping with the increased travel demand throughout the world. We can see that the artificial intelligence is booming again, and you can see it here and there. And yesterday, specifically, EASA, which is the European Aviation Safety Agency, has released a new publication and the new roadmap, version 2, for dealing with the or implementation of the new AI strategies. But we have outpaced the readiness of the skilled operators and skilled people within the airlines or MROs, maintenance providers, or even for the OEMs. And we're also increasing the innovation and the creativity within the technological system. So the advanced technological issues are progressing very fast. You have very new aircraft, you have very new drones, but the people, we are not in a position to prepare the people in order to be advanced. I'm talking about the aviation skilled laborers, to cope with the new advancements and the technology, or even for the AI. So we have to attract and develop young strategies, young procedures, prepare the talented people in order to cope with these changes. And we can understand that people are more likely, or young people are more likely to cope with the tech savvy and to be ready and to attract people to this industry and acceptable to changes. I understand that all people are not able to change because of the age, but of course we have to prepare youth to be ready for the changes and to cope with the technological advancements. Within this slide, we can see that this is the air traffic, the world air traffic increase. I'm talking about the significant contributor, which is the aviation business, airline business, that is the major contributor to the economies of scale of states, that every state should understand this and cope with the changes and provide the job and create more jobs for the people, because it's very important to sustain the business afterwards in the future. So we have to attract people and ensure that the industry remains very competitive in a very competitive market. But this we have, I cannot see properly, so. Some people, they say, okay, let's move about one single pilot aircraft. We can see this, of course, already in the business, maybe in the general aviation business, like the Citation aircraft or the Phenom industry, or some Embraer aircraft, or the Phenom 100. So these aircraft are single pilot aircraft, but there are some risks and issues behind it, okay? So why do we have 2 pilots or 3 pilots flying an aircraft? It is to improve the safety level of the aircraft, okay? And to provide more redundant systems within the airplane and the level of the safety of this airline. However, single pilot aircraft is linked with the increased workload, with the situational awareness. So considering always the human factor of the pilot flying this aircraft under high workload and the stress factor affecting his behavior, especially during a crisis or during very critical situation of the pilot or the aircraft itself, especially for the weather conditions. Other people talk about autonomous aircraft. What is meant by autonomous? I'm not talking about remotely piloted aircraft, which is already governed by ICAO, and ICAO document that talks about the RPAS and RPA or RPS, or the UAV or UAVS. Unmanned aircraft vehicles or whatever. I'm talking about the autonomous airplane that is already programmed to fly without pilots or without being controlled on ground. Because programming an aircraft or flying an aircraft remotely, it needs ground station, it needs ground remotely pilots licensed, trained within approved organization. But for the autonomous aircraft, the aircraft is already programmed to depart, fly, and then land in a certain airport without the intervention of any person. And that, of course, has several deficiencies or several challenges that we cannot cope with it right now, especially for large aircraft carrying so many passengers on board, at least, let's say, 19 passengers. So we have technical malfunction. So the autonomous aircraft could be facing a technical malfunction, cybersecurity threats, especially for the C2 link between the aircraft and the ground station, communication errors, or limited awareness. So I believe, in my own perception, that today, or even for the next 10 years, we are not able to cope with autonomous flights for the commercial air transport aircraft. Considering always the legal and regulatory challenges which are not yet mature within the states, and there's a liability and insurance issues that are not ready yet to cope with these changes and to cover the autonomous aircraft transporting 100 or 200 passengers. Also, personally, I'm not now ready. If there's an autonomous aircraft ready for commercial business, I'm not ready because I'm not trusting this aircraft. I cannot board this airplane and fly from a destination to another destination because our mind is not yet ready or mature to accept such a change. Considering the increasing travel demand, considering the increase of travel aircraft, new modifications, new amendments, new upgrades, or these AI airplanes, having regard to the retirement of engineers and inability to cope with the changes, finding the proper technical and qualified aircraft maintenance engineers, and the aging program of an aircraft, there's a huge challenge now because in the past, we used to have this corrosion prevention programs, and what aircraft is facing from structural problems, structural corrosion issues that need to be managed. Now we are facing, and even from the past, we are facing so many problems in finding the proper qualified personnel within the MROs or maintenance providers to control the aging programs of these aircraft. And within the authorities, there is also a need for inspectors who are qualified in the aging programs and how to control and manage the corrosion of these airplanes, especially for the areas where airlines are stored near the sea. Talking about the new graduates, aviation business, is very advanced, and you cannot rely on new graduate people, engineers, aircraft engineers. These people have to go through at least 3 years training program, full-timers, employment within an MRO in order to be ready to be released as aircraft maintenance engineers or technicians, and then receive the proper training in order to type rating at an approved organization in order to be ready to release an airplane, and that goes under the quality management system of the maintenance provider. So now I want to talk about the industry views, because what I talked earlier is about the authority, how the authority sees the situation in the future. Raytheon, it talks about the CFO, he mentioned that the absence of productivity from not enough workers being available to complete projects was hurting profit margins between 15 and 30% in 2022. And Delta Airlines CEO, he said that nearly 2,000 senior pilots from his airline retired early in summer of 2020, and that caused a bullwhip effect this summer in 2020, as there weren't enough active pilots to meet the airline's schedule. And that goes in harmony with what has happened in summer 2022 in Europe, where people are retiring from the aviation business, and that Europe has collapsed or has jeopardized the aviation business and airports, of course. And I believe that this year they will be facing the same problem. As for Boeing, so from the Boeing pilot and technician outlook, between 22, this is a forecast, so estimates that the global industry need to recruit, train, and hire 610,000 maintenance technicians, 602,000 new pilots, and 899,000 cabin crew. The need existed before the pandemic, but dramatically changed with the social upheaval caused by the COVID-19. So, and this one I have extracted from the Airbus as a reference. The next 20 years, Airbus forecast that the demand for new aircraft will progressively shift from fleet growth to accelerated replacement of older, less efficient fuel aircraft. Don't know if this one is, okay. So what Airbus is saying that not only the airlines will be requesting or demanding for a new aircraft, but the issue is with the replacement of old aircraft with the new ones. So the total would be like 39,500,000. This is the total deliveries. The replacement of the aircraft of old one with the growth of a new request aircraft, which is 24,050 airplanes. The total would be 39,490 aircraft, new deliveries, and this is okay, the new passenger and the freighter airplanes. So that is the study made by Airbus for the next years between 22 and the 2041. The air traffic is expected to grow up at 3.6% to 2041, because the airlines, they are looking for more efficient, less fuel consumption aircraft. It needs a new crew training, technology is developing, but the retirement of pilots is increasing, unfortunately. Sorry for this, but it talks about the 2041. Strategies, programs, and tools. So training is evolving. Training is evolving from skill-based instructional techniques into situational awareness, and I would like to give an example why it's moving to scenario-based training or maybe reality-based training, which we will see very often from now on. Considering the training of cabin crew, You have to put the cabin crew, all the pilots, in real situation, not only providing theoretical courses and putting them on a flight simulator, but you have to be more realistic and giving more advanced scenarios, especially for cabin crew who used to receive training like classic ones. So we're moving to more decision-making, to integrating risk management within this training and developing more scenarios. If I'm taking an example of ditching, so now the situation is moving completely further, which is like putting more waves in the swimming pools, increasing more simulations like the lightnings or the sound system, everything. So it's developing more and more. Crew training programs need to be revised, of course, but it's not the only of modifying the training, and you have to provide tools that need to be enhanced to cope with the new generation trends and methodology. Airlines require last most efficient airplane, fleet modernization as well. 20% of the in-service aircraft are new generation equipment as per the 2021 records. And Airbus forecast, as I mentioned earlier, 39,500 new passenger and freighter aircraft deliveries over the coming years. Now, Boeing has provided this study. It's a forecast between 2020 and 2032. If I take the example of pilots with this graph, it was 10,000 number of airplanes compared with the number of crew, which is 500,000, and that for this year, it increased more than this number. Of course, it's like around 600,000. And this is the cabin crew. The numbers are reflected here more. So this is based on the Boeing study. New pilots are needed globally, which is 602,000, 610,000, maintenance technicians and cabin crew, which is 899,000 cabin crew are required for the coming 10 years. Okay? And this is categorized as per, as per countries. Okay, and let's say for the Middle East region, you have here a demand for 53,000 pilots, new technicians 50,000, and 99,000 cabin crew for just 9 years from now. And this is what we say, we're facing a crisis. We're living in an uncertain situation, but we will be facing a crisis in the future, and we have to think about new strategies that will be acceptable globally in order to cope for this or to bridge this big gap. Okay, so every year by year, we're heading to more problems that we need to manage from now in order not to reach a big gap. We have also to think about managing a situation, being proactive not to reach accidents, because the major factor that will lead to an accident is the top management of the organization and the policy about, let's say, recruiting a qualified personnel and investing properly in people. And how we invest, of course, there should be an annual budget for the training and building the capacity of personnel, of new people, how to integrate them within the system of the organization and to make, let's say, bonding properly with the old people who are properly skilled and trained, but they come from a classic model, and now we have to shift to a new model and focus on, let's say, like not team building, but more like team bonding, getting people talking the same language, understand each other, and have this common harmony within the same organization. Well, McKinsey have these two leaders who talked about the capacity building for the coming 10 years. If you're an operations person and you want to learn the future of industry, instead of flying all the way to see a plant, you will have augmented reality, virtual reality that will help you do virtual visits. I somehow agree with these words if I'm providing only like theoretical training. But when it comes to aviation, this is very generic. But when it comes to aviation business, you are providing full flight simulators for pilots who are doing all kind of training, even base training and basic check are conducted on this full flight simulator. So you cannot just provide them with virtual or online trainings, and they have to go always to the simulator. Same for the cabin crew. So it goes in parallel for the people who are receiving theoretical trainers, then that goes with it, but not for the pilots or for the cabin crew. And for this one, we need to move to a model where we're using technology, remote learning, more micro-learning than event-based learning, and more simulations that truly immerse the learner as they do their job versus as a separate action. So people, they provide their own insights or perceptions about the training. But the idea is to get the people on board and make a purposeful investment in people, and this is a big challenge that airlines are facing. Some people, they see, let's say, the low-cost carriers, they are facing properly training with an investment on training because this airline is trying to cut costs for the training. It's not an insult about low-cost carriers, but you can see this model that some operators, they are trying to minimize the investment of the training because they do not consider it as a major contributor for the success and for the sustainability of that operator. So look for skills, not credential, not ignoring the credentials, but we have to focus more on the skills. Okay, so the skills, I found it in the people who are properly qualified throughout the years, who receive the proper on-job or hands-on training on that aircraft, okay? And then you have to integrate the new people with it and adjust to technology-enabled and personalized training. Aviation business, I mean, is very big, and there are so much vacancies, but there's no proper job orientation. So you have opportunities, let's say the airline pilot, aircraft engineer, traffic controllers, dispatcher, flight attendants. There's a big gap right now, and then we have to bridge this gap. Cargo specialists, safety inspectors, consultants, aviation meteorologists. So there's a big business, but unfortunately, states are lacking how to, let's say, to market for the need that we are in a bad need for new graduates that need to be properly trained in this business. So how we have to retain, you have to employ, initially train these people, and since we are investing in these people, then we have to think about the retention of those people within either authorities or the airline. They work together, but you have to provide a kind of mechanism in order to warrant the retention of these people within the authority. Why? Because there's a big shortage in the future. So there will be authorities or even airlines competing with each other to attract those people, okay? And that provides a kind of uncertainty between airlines. And you can understand that a pilot working for airline X, he cannot work directly for airline Y before receiving the proper indoctrination training in order to have this cockpit inside philosophy that people are thinking and having this CRM resource management within the cockpit, understanding each other quickly in order to have a proper decision-making, especially in a critical situation and upset operations. So first, you have to establish the proper foundation, young people working together with skilled people, because you cannot have young students getting inside the organization without receiving the proper training, but they cannot be skilled before joining the previous people and establish a collaboration program with the airline, with the authorities and the airlines. And then here you attract the talented people, providing them with the new technology, and then you have this fruitful mix in order to prepare for a better future. So promote benefits of a career in aircraft engineering, and then education with the institution, partnership, university, technical institutions, provide mentorship, mentorship and career development opportunities, offer competitive advantages and compensation benefit for the employees, and invest in technologies and tools. So here you can see that they know the competition within the market, and which is very important to me is the creative compensation package for the people and including retention bonuses. Otherwise, you cannot retain or attract the people to sustain within your organization and work happily, let's say, in order to generate more and produce more within the organization. Again, this small part here, I have to read it, unfortunately. As we observe drastic staffing shortages, the usability and efficiency of each person must be pushed to the max. With software solution, one important thing to remember, if you are not extremely understaffed, the software will not find you any employees. However, digital solutions can aid you in the management of the staff you do have. So the rationale behind it is that you can acquire the best solution in the globe, but this solution will not be a substitute or cannot replace the pilots or the engineers or the management. So you will always, in the future, and now, you will always need to have the properly trained people within your organization and to provide these people with the proper tool and the proper training on how to use these tools in order to discharge their obligations properly. Okay, so in brief, I mean, you can schedule proper tool, find the better ways to roster the staff. So use the software to roster the staff and not the opposite. Or the system will not replace the people, but the system, it composed of people and tools. Training tools and then the maintenance tools. So augmented reality lets the user communicate regardless their locations. But you will always need the people there and provide them with the proper training. And that comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I'm ready for questions if you have any. Thank you.